Why do you think short dramas are getting popular these days?
It's escapism.
How you get involved into the short drama industry?
Yeah. I've always liked watching romance, and I've always been open to watching wherever it's made in the world. So obviously Netflix has been great for that, because that's how I found Chinese dramas on it. I've watched Indonesian, I've watched Korean, I've watched Japanese, I've watched Bollywood. So I've always been really open to watching it. If it's a good romantic story, I'm there. In last year, in April 2024, I had a load of really stressful things going on in my life, which meant that for that month, I was really struggling to focus and relax. So the Chinese dramas that I was watching, they're brilliant, but they're 40 episodes long. They're normally an hour each. And I'm reading subtitles, and often you need to put a bit of time in and watch a few hours to get into the storyline and sort of understand, the world that they've built. And I just couldn't get into them. So I was scrolling TikTok as like the only thing that I really would vaguely help me switch off from the stresses. And yeah, something popped up. And it was obviously when they were starting to really advertise the short dramas. So I followed it across, and it was called You Belong With Me, which was a real short one. Next thing I know, I've spent the coins, I've done the ads, and then I've paid to watch all of it. You get sucked in, don't you? And I haven't really stopped since then. So what was quite interesting was that first few months, I did watch pretty much everything that was on Real Short, and then I think I found Short Max. So I've watched a lot, and then worked out that yes, if it was going to be affordable, I started doing the maths. I was like, okay, I needed either to be doing the unlocking, or some of them you work out yearly subscriptions better. And then obviously more and more apps I've seen come out, and you start watching, different things and sort of rotating around them. And then I run my own business. So, I've got a team of 10 and I do that. And I took Christmas off. Basically got bored over Christmas and was like, I'll just set up an Instagram account, because I hadn't looked massively on social media or other sources for short drama information. But I'd looked a few actors and actresses up, and I thought, well, I'll do an Instagram account, because I don't think anyone's really writing reviews. I think it's mainly the fan stuff that I saw was mainly focused on a certain actor or an actress, and would mainly be image edits, or just talking about that. So I thought, I'm just going to write some reviews and just have fun with it, with a kind of take it seriously, talk about the acting, be positive, but also, enjoy some of the silliness. So I started this in December, and then I was asking questions, because I didn't know how it worked. So I was like, how do you film these? And, blah, blah, blah. Next thing I know, I had actors and actresses messaging me who were like, someone's talking about these dramas, and then they were really keen to share, oh, we film it like this and we do it like this. So I ended up like talking to all these actors and actresses who were incredibly generous with their knowledge and explaining how things worked. And it hasn't really stopped growing since then, because I've had, producers, writers, apps get in touch, a lot of fans get in touch. There's now a lot of other fans setting up their own accounts. And I think that's one of the exciting things, because obviously if I watched movies or something, if I start writing about, Timothy Chalamet, he's not going to get in touch, is he? He's not going to see that. So it's quite nice that you end up actually talking to the people involved. So I think that's really rewarding. I think there's just clearly a really nice community. Most of the fans I talk to, they don't know someone else in their everyday life who watches these, so they really enjoy connecting online with someone. So I've got friends now, thanks to this, who are really close friends, in Brazil and America and Albania and Australia. And I'm really good friends with quite a few actors and actresses now, and people in the industry. So yeah, it just kind of grew from that. And then I was like, there don't seem to be any awards. No one seems to be, it's such a new industry. And I think my business brain is, I can so see the potential in this. I can see it's growing and growing. So I thought, well, why don't we just do some fan awards? So I just put something together, and 1,000 people ended up nominating things, because I thought, well, I'm not going to sit there and say these. And then I sorted it all out, and I put it out to vote, and then all the actors and actresses were sharing it. And next thing I know, I had 16,000 votes from all around the world, pretty much every nation, and everyone was really, really engaged. So I'm doing this award ceremony now in about 2 weeks, which will be on YouTube. And we've done things like, best actor and actress in a drama, supporting actor. We had to do the hardest working CEO assistant, because obviously we all know that assistant does a lot of work. Best
Right.
child performer. We've done things like, favorite hair, costume, makeup, best action scene. And then we're doing some big ones, which are people's favorite vertical of the year, rising star, so that's kind of a new person in the industry, and then legend, which is like someone who's done, you know, over 8 verticals and is, I was thinking about, you know, how Oscars have like the lifetime achievement. It was that award. So yeah, it's just grown and grown. And then I also, because I really believe in it, I was like, just why aren't Western media reporting on this? Because all I ever read about in papers here are like, oh, the film industry's dying and there's no money and Hollywood's not doing stuff and, you know, theatre productions are closing. And I'm like, I'm talking to these actors and actresses and all the crews who are saying vertical dramas are a lifeline. We're getting work. We're getting to work every day. We're making rent. So I've been trying since January, because of my day job. One of the ladies on my team is a PR expert. We've been trying to get press because we're like, there's a story here. And then it all suddenly happened. So about 2-3 weeks ago, we got a massive article in The Guardian, which is a national newspaper here. And I was on BBC Radio 4, the Today programme, which is one of the main morning breakfast radio shows talking about vertical dramas. And I think they're slowly catching on here now. And I sort of expect by the end of the year that people will know what vertical dramas are. But the moment when I mention them in the UK, pretty much most people look blankly at me and I have to explain it to them. But I think we're at that cultural tipping point that by the end of the year, it will be known. And then you find out that people have seen the adverts on TikTok. They just don't realise what they are. So actually, they sometimes know what they are without realising that that's what they are that they've seen.
You mentioned January, that's January this year, right?
So this has all happened in 3 months, incredibly fast. So and now I've done like you, I set up a YouTube channel. So I'm interviewing actors and actresses. So I'm doing that pretty much every night. I mean, I'm talking to different media. And I think the growth is huge. And I think for the teams over here in the West, they've really enjoyed me taking it seriously, because I know that some of them have said, you know, Hollywood are quite snobbish about it, or, you know, it gets dismissed, you know, it's just soap operas. Whereas actually, I think first of all, it's absolutely phenomenal what is achieved in like 7 to 10 day shoot and the length of time. I mean, that is insane quality. I think some of the acting you will see is the best. The creativity, storylines, you know, they're evolving so fast. Just, you know, a bit more production. There's been a brilliant Formula One recently, which was just, I don't know how they did that in 12 days, but it's brilliant. So I would argue that there's a lot more creativity and excitement in this than there is in mainstream Hollywood. I've not gone to the cinema for well over a year. Cinema will cost me £20 at least, just for me, not even taking my family. I'm about 45-minute drive there in traffic, 45 minutes back. You know, a vertical drama app, some of the best ones, you know, I can unlock for, you know, less than that, about £15 a week. I can unlock everything on that platform, and I've probably got 100 plus shows to watch. And I know at least 50 of them I'll probably 50% I'll enjoy. And I can do that on my sofa, and I can do it. I'm stuck in a queue somewhere, or I'm waiting, as happens in my job, I'm waiting for some technology to download. So it's so much more convenient. And actually, I think it does work out as more cost effective than people think. I mean, I'm from the days we used to buy videos and DVDs, and, you know, that would be the cost of unlocking a platform for a week. And it's like, well, that would only be for one movie. You know, again, I'm getting so many projects. The other thing as well, as I said, about the fact that obviously people are now choosing based on actors and actresses. If you're in Hollywood, you know, if you like a certain big name actor, you're lucky if you maybe get 1 or 2 movies that year with them in. With vertical dramas, you know, you've got potentially 2 or 3 coming out a month with that actor in. So I think that's the other thing people really enjoy, just the volume of content, and that they like someone, they know there'll be lots they can watch.
Why do you think short dramas are getting popular these days?
I think it's escapism, a lot of it. So I think people like that it is slightly heightened, and the tropes. For a long time, if you liked romantic movies, the main thing that really catered for them is something called Hallmark, which are a certain style of movies that they make in America, which are very, you know, they're lovely scenery, but they're very, very gentle. It's very much, you know, the biggest thing is like there's a Christmas tree lighting ceremony, or they make pumpkin pies. And I think they were popular, but they've become a parody of themselves. And I think as the world's got more difficult, I think everyone agrees around the world that things feel harder and bleaker. People want a bit more escapism, and they want a bit more high stakes, and they want to see people, you know, good people overcoming bad. So like going back to the first one we talked about, Love Again, My Princess, you know, I think there's a real satisfaction in seeing the heroine go back, change her life round, and totally turn the tables on the villain. So I think it's slightly a sign of the times. The other really interesting thing that people have said to me, because I know a few media people have said, oh, doesn't that show that people can't focus? They need it on their phone. But people have actually said it helps them concentrate more, because they say if they had a traditional TV on, they'll often find they'll also be on their phone playing games or looking at messages. Whereas because they're actually watching the drama on their phone, they're actually more focused because they're doing that, and they're not also doing messages. So in an odd way, I think it's actually improving people's focus. And yeah, it just means that you can then watch them anywhere. I mean, I've had people tell me that they watch them at work. I've had people say, it's brilliant if they're traveling. I've seen people watching them on trains, So I think it's that convenience as well. We live on our phones, don't we? I think that's global. So it makes sense that there's an entertainment made for the phone. I actually find it really hard now if I'm looking at, say, YouTube or Netflix on my phone, and the fact that I have to turn it. It's like, well, that feels really odd now. I'm so used to everything being in the vertical. And I think obviously TikTok trained us for that. But yeah, it's like, well, this is too small. Why is it not filmed to suit my phone?
The first time you watched the short drama clip, if I told you it's actually adapted by a original Chinese short drama, were you surprised?
No, but I think I'm rare because I know I'd watched the Chinese dramas beforehand.
Oh, right. Okay.
So I understood. There's actually some where I've seen the original Chinese drama. I think most people would be surprised. Yeah, I don't think they are. So I think once they get into it and they realise, and they're like, oh, but yeah, I think I'm quite rare in that I realised from the beginning.
So when you talk to different fans, what kind of genres or stories are they looking for?
Everyone still wants a romance, so they definitely want the romance. I've had quite a lot of people who kind of want a bit more, like mystery, thriller. Some people are mentioning horror. There's definitely men out there who like short dramas who want some more horror. I think within the genres of romance, mafia stuff always seems to be really popular. People do like the werewolves, they like the vampires. Quite interestingly, I've had a few people say to me they actually weren't massive fantasy fans, but they like it in the short dramas. So it's actually converted people. People do really like the billionaire ones. I think they feel there needs to be more than that. A lot of people want period stuff. There's a few that are starting to come out with more period settings, which I think makes it more interesting. I don't think people have ever said to me, oh, we want the kids ones, but they really enjoy them when they're there. And then we seem to get these genres as well. So obviously there seems to be a wave of sports ones at the moment, which I think again, I don't think people are really watching them for the sports and they said, I want to watch a sports drama. I think they're watching it because they like the male lead, basically. And they're like, well, I'll watch that because it's the new whatever. We've also had a run of, I would say, the more 50 Shades of Grey. I think there's a place. I don't like them myself. And I think quite a lot are problematic. It depends how it's done. I know some are filmed responsibly and they're fine, but I think there's quite a lot where it basically feels like softcore porn, and people are like, it drags the space down rather than elevating it. It feels like it's catering to the lowest common denominator. And I think if we want this space to grow, and as I do, be taken seriously by people, and people get the credits that they deserve for, like, some of the production values and the acting, then the way to go forward is to move away more from that storylines and these really sort of toxic love, and actually have much more positive things. I'd like to see a lot more comedy. A lot of people have said a bit more comedy as well, and even just some things turning the tropes up and down. People are really happy to see experiments. I've also seen an action one that's come out recently that looks good. I know a few have been trying to do action, and it looks like there's one that's come out. Good MMA ones that have come out. There's a great one called Fight for Love, which when I spoke to them, and they said they filmed in Vietnam, and that's made a real difference because the stunts are a lot better in it. It looks phenomenal. So I think that's something people are ready for, higher level action. And
so do you prefer like a short drama in British accent or other accent? Because most of films are done in the US.
Most American, yeah. Well, we're behind in Britain, as we normally always are. The ones that have come out, I would say that the acting is probably the best acting you will see. But I have noticed quite a lot of them are a little snobbish, shall we say, and don't really want to be associated with them. And they kind of hide it. And they're like, I've made an independent movie. And they won't really talk about that. That was what I noticed last year. This year, it's definitely improving. So there are quite a lot more coming out. There's more companies setting up in Britain. I think and there are some really good scripts beginning to go around. the thing that got me really excited is we all see quite a lot of British accents. Then they tend to go down the the royal story route, which for me is really boring. I don't find that interesting. Of, oh, he's a prince. But there was one where it had a guy with a northern accent. So for us, that's Manchester. And that was really good to see. That felt like coming home. That felt really British to me. So I think it's going to improve a lot this year, and there will be a lot more British accents out there on screen, which I know the Americans love. I think that's partly why people talk to me. They find my accent charming, apparently. So I think that's what's really exciting. And then you get each areas. I mean, I know they come from Chinese, but you get their take on it. So even just the settings. So I can tell the difference between ones that have been filmed in LA and ones that are filmed in New York. And the Australian ones will often take advantage of the fact they've got all those coasts. The British ones, I do like seeing London streets in the background. And then actually we found quite a lot of the ones where we're going, that's beautiful, where's that? And that's actually ones that have been filmed in China. So it is nice when you bring in some of that flavour of the country of where it's made.
Talk to different friends are they all female?
Largely female. I would say age-wise, probably from about 20 to, I do know some people in their mid-60s. Most are probably in their 30s. Wide range of jobs and life experiences as well. People are married, lots of kids, aren't married, doing really high-level jobs. Some are stay-at-home mums, some are carers, some have health issues. I do have a few male friends that I speak. The main one I speak to, he's in Albania, and he's a professor and a school teacher. I have spoken as well to, actually, interestingly, another academic in the UK who's a male who watches them as well. And we've corresponded a bit, and he's got some really interesting comparisons with very early Hollywood movies and a certain style of those, and he's made some quite interesting things. So it is largely women, but I think the men are coming in, and I know quite a few who are married have said that they'll watch it and their husband's like, what are you watching? And the next thing they know, their husband's as invested as they are, and then they're watching it as a couple. So I think men are coming into it. I spoke to a Chinese journalist the other week who said that actually one of the main viewing audiences in China for these is actually men of a certain age. So it'll be interesting to see whether that translates over here. At the moment, I would say the main thing men here tend to watch in the UK is generally sports. I think sports dominates, live sports, and then there will be either comedy shows or often more crime dramas, I'd say. It'll be interesting to see whether they get addicted as well in the way that we all are.
But mostly they're female-oriented for global short dramas.
I don't think they've really tried with the male-orientated ones, or even particularly marketing to men as much. There is one that's just come out on Real Short, which is called Undercover Prison King. There we are. That looks to me like a proper action movie. It feels like an action movie, and I could see that going viral with men, that one. It's really well done. There's a bit of romance, but it very much feels like a Western style action movie, like a Jason Statham one or Keanu Reeves or something. So I think that's really exciting, because I think one of the things they want to do, isn't it, is bring more and more people in. At the moment, most of the short drama viewers are women. And I think something like that, I could see that bringing a big male audience in, which would be exciting.
Yeah, maybe it's what we call localized scripts. So some scripts are originally from China. It was a hit in China, and the writers just write Western version, and then we find like American writer to localize it. But maybe the what you're talking about is a new one. Maybe there's no original version.
I think there's space for both, because I think quite a lot of the stories, obviously the fact that they've done so well in China, and, a lot of stories are universal, aren't they? That's what I've always enjoyed when I started watching the Chinese and Korean dramas, of that universality of it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you want to fall in love and be treated in a certain way. So I think there's space for that. But I think in order for it to keep growing in the West, we do need the localized stories as well. And I think a mix of both, everyone wins. As fans, we just get more and more content that's going to be even better. So that's what's most exciting about it.
You've been watching like short dramas for
1 year.
Do you see any trend on the production side, on the acting, and on the scripts?
So trend, more and more apps are springing up every day, which gets annoying as a fan because we can't afford everything. So it does mean there's more, you have to kind of choose and wait often I'll talk to fans and they'll wait till a platform has got a certain amount of dramas out to then buy it for a week or a month, watch them all, and then end the subscription. Production value is definitely increasing. I think what's happening as well is quite a lot of the actors and actresses in the space are now moving into doing producing and writing themselves. And they've got this wonderful skill of they understand the pace needed for short drama and how it works, but also obviously have the understanding of what Western audience wants. So I think that's really driving a lot of the quality forward. I also think more and more people are seeing the potential. So I know of actor I've spoken to in the UK who's been in like mainstream TV over here, you know, he's been in Vikings, which is a massive TV show, and other things, and he's looked at verticals and realized this is an opportunity, there's going to be lots of work here. And he's actually just gone to China. He's filming 2 back-to-back ones in China now. So I think that's the thing, you're going to have more people in the wider acting world seeing it as an opportunity. Still a bit of the model to acting train, which has varying success. Sometimes the models are good at acting, sometimes they aren't. Other trends with stories, mainly, I think just that there's a lot more genres now. I know they're experimenting. I know that some horror ones are being made, some period ones are coming out. So I think that the things that fans have been asking for are happening. Then there seems to be a bit of a divide of there's a lot that are trying new things, you know, and elevating the stories or just adding the twists that you mentioned. And then it feels like some of the platforms are doubling down on the older style of, you know, the quite toxic storylines and endless slaps and, for me, far too much sex. And they come to be like, but this always worked, so we're going to do more of that. And I think there's a bit of a divide. My hope is it keeps growing and with new and fresher ideas, because, as I said, the danger is it would go the route of Hallmark, which is what happened with Hallmark. Hallmark, when all their movies started coming out, they did have lots of new ideas and try different things, and then it just became the same thing again and again and again and again. Became a parody of itself, and now doesn't have that viewership. And I think that would be the worry. The vertical dramas, if it's just those same storylines endlessly remade, it will be a flash in the pan. You know, people watch it for 2 years, but they'll get bored and moved on. Whereas the way to keep people there is to then keep moving the storylines forward.
Horror story. Is it released yet, or you just heard it's being made?
I know, well, I talk to quite a lot of the male actors, so I know they want to do that. They're like, we don't mind, you know, taking our tops off, but they're like, I want to do horror. And then I interviewed an actress last week. She said, I'm doing a horror one next week. We're going to be in some woods. And then I put something up on my Instagram, and I've had about 3 other people saying, I'm doing a horror. So they're being made right now. And then obviously when I put that up, I pretty much had half the male actors going, oh, I want to be in a horror vertical. So they're all very excited about it. So, and I think, again, that will bring in new viewers, particularly younger viewers. And it feels like it really works on the phone as well, because I think with horror, you know, like going back to the Blair Witch Project, you don't need to have the high production values. You know, it works if it's a bit rough and ready and shot fast. So it seems a really obvious overlap to bring them in.
Regarding the like horrors, you say it's doesn't need a very high like production quality.
I don't think it necessarily does. No, cost wise, they're more. Whereas horror, you know, if you're not doing loads of effects, you can just do with the actors, can't you? And a load of whatever you use for your blood. So I can see that it seems a more natural genre to try and do something with that's not going to cost as much.
How can people be threatened if it's only like that kind of screen?
I think it's the kind of the acting then, isn't it? That leaves it very much in the power of the actors. If the actors are terrified in the story, you get transported with them, I think.
Have you ever talked to anyone from platform?
Talk to some producers, yes, at different platforms. Point of view, because they want to know
what you think.
Fans. Yeah, and I think because I did the fan awards, so I've got all the data of kind of what people voted on and from where. Because yeah, I basically there's a lot of fan accounts set up now, but I'm kind of one of the more original ones, as in I was first. I just seem to have a profile, so people tend to ask me. I also think I'm probably slightly more unusual because I just have a possibly slightly wider media awareness and business awareness just because of my background. So with my reviews, because I used to read a lot of books, I'm able to bring in more cultural things, and like compare, well, the characters in this are actually, it's quite like, how Dickens was first received. Dickens was written off and it had kind of these exaggerated characters. And I'm like, well, actually, that's quite like short dramas. You have it's written off with these exaggerated characters, but ends up being really popular. And I think that's what people appreciate, that I'm able to make those kind of comparisons and give people a way into them.
I know those Chinese apps that distribute short dramas all over the world. That's quite interesting to see so many people are interested in short dramas. To me, that's a surprise as well.
Yeah, but no, they are. I think they've just a lot in India as well, actually. And it's quite interesting because you can tell certain stories that play well in certain areas. So, and also certain actors and actresses, because quite a lot of the awards were based around that. So often actors and actresses who maybe are slightly swarthier looking or have, dark hair will often get a lot of votes from Eastern Europe and India. A lot of the blonder actors and actresses do very well in the Philippines. So you kind of almost start to understand some slight cultural preferences for what people like to consume.
Okay, you mentioned about the content preference. Can you tell me more about this? People from different countries.
They like the raunchier dramas in the Philippines, I can tell you that. And I think the sports dramas so Breaking the Ice is probably one of the biggest dramas over here. Yeah. And I think particularly in the Philippines, the stars of that are very, very popular there. I think interestingly, the revenge storylines seem to do more well in the sort of Eastern Europe, sort of Russia, Kazakhstan. And then, yeah, I'd say it's just a real mix. There's a lot of people and also obviously the interesting thing is pretty much everyone is watching these in English as well. So I speak to, a lot of fans in Europe or South America who then message me and apologize about their English, and they're messaging me in perfect English. And it's like, I don't speak any of that, but that's quite interesting as well. I think the fact that these are all in English makes them very accessible, and that most countries around the world, people speak English and are quite happy to consume content in English. The other ones that I know are quite popular are, I haven't watched them, but my drama have quite a lot that Ukrainian actors make. So there's quite a big little Ukrainian industry, and I know that they do really well, particularly with Germany, Poland, those sort of countries really like those storylines. So they're probably the most successful, I would say, of the different European options at the moment. But then the Americans love, a British storyline with a prince in. So they always do well in America. So there's sort of certain storylines that work in certain audiences.